Good morning and welcome, everyone. President of the Ismaili Council for Ontario, Salim Banji, esteemed leaders, honored guests, and dear friends, good morning and welcome. My name is Zara Bimani, and I will start us off this morning. It is my distinct privilege to welcome you to the Ismaili Centre Toronto for our event this morning. Let us begin by acknowledging the rich and enduring history of Indigenous peoples in Ontario. We acknowledge that this land we gather on today is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Toronto Purchase and applies to land east of Brown's Line to Woodbine Avenue and north towards Newmarket. This territory is also covered by the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. I would also like to share a few housekeeping items with you. Please note that volunteers will be capturing photos and video recording today's event. Washrooms are located downstairs. We encourage you to share your learnings from today's event on social media using the hashtag FutureProofing2019. We also encourage you to use the app Slido to submit your questions for the Q&A portion of this morning and enter code 4823. For those of you joining for the first time, this center is part of a global network of 6 Ismaili centers, each architecturally unique, yet designed to reflect a mood of humility, forward outlook, friendship, and dialogue. Ismaili centers are spaces for social and cultural gatherings, intellectual engagement, and reflection, as well as spiritual contemplation. In addition to hosting cultural and artistic performances, the centers host a series of lectures and symposia throughout the year, which bring together thought leadership and foster a greater understanding of critical issues. These lectures encourage exchange and mutual understanding between the diverse peoples, communities, and faiths, while broadening intellectual horizons of academics and experts in the field. Now, I would like to welcome the President of the Ismaili Council for Ontario, Salim Banji, on stage for welcoming remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, happy Sunday morning and welcome to the Ismaili Centre in Toronto. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today. We're warmed by the beautiful day outside, and I am convinced that by the time we leave this session today, we'll be further warmed by the ideas, the thoughts from all our presenters today. Thank you very much. We definitely are very happy to see everyone here today. The sessions we have lined up will certainly coax you to think more critically about the rapidly changing notions of traditional career paths. We will begin with a keynote presentation that will focus on the current research about what the future of work holds, followed by a moderated discussion where the panelists will share their experiences and advise on navigating the changing needs of today's workplace. After lunch, there will be an interactive workshop that will delve into the concept of personal branding and professional presence. We will learn how to proactively project a positive and more confident persona. You can never overinvest in building your brand and your communication skills. I would also like to acknowledge all the speakers who have made time to come today and actively engage with us. His Highness the Aga Khan has placed tremendous weight on education, specifically meritocratic education coupled with lifelong learning. During the foundation ceremony for the Aga Khan University Graduate School of Media and Communications in Nairobi, Kenya, on July the 27th, 2011, he stated, quote, "The most important thing we can learn or teach at any school in a world of perpetual change is the ability to go on learning. None of us have all the answers. Quite often, we don't even know what questions to ask. Nor can we discern the road ahead by looking into a rear-view mirror. Past lessons must constantly be renewed and reapplied as we adapt to new technologies and new expectations," end quote. I am very thrilled indeed to be with you all here this morning, as I'm quite sure that although none of us may have all the answers, at least we can start contemplating the questions, intelligent and intentional questions that will act as guardrails and hopefully propel us all to gain our full potential. I will now give you a brief background on our keynote speakers. Heather Russick is a Director of Policy and Innovation at the Brookfield Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Ryerson University. She has extensive experience as a strategist and designer, pushing the boundaries of policymaking. At the Brookfield Institute, Heather experiments with innovation research methods, working on human-centered design, futures, and art-based practices. Before that, she worked in a healthcare leadership, ranging from management consulting and program management to strategy. Heather holds a Bachelor of Science from Queen's University, an MBA from the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University, and a Master of Design in Strategic Foresight and Innovation from OCAD University. Yasmin Rajabi is one of the young and upcomers at the Brookfield Institute. She is a project manager and researcher on the Institute's largest and most highly cited project, Employment in 2030. Over the course of 18 months, Yasmin has been working with her team to forecast employment and skill demands around the year 2030, of course. Prior to joining the Institute, Yasmin was a project manager at the Young Women's Leadership Network. She has designed, executed, and evaluated training workshops and events to build the leadership capacity of girls and young women. Yasmin has extensive experience running youth programs and founded a food bank at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. She is currently a City of Toronto protégé, an executive of Food Secure Canada's Youth Caucus, and sits on the board of directors for the Young Women's Leadership Network. Yasmin has an Honor's BA in Public Policy and City Studies from the University of Toronto. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Heather Russick and Yasmin Rajabi to the stage.
Sure. Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning. Thank you for having us here today. Here is a mango, but this isn't just any mango. What if I told you this mango was from the future? What if I told you this mango was grown here in Canada, and it was the product of out-of-service oil sands that were transitioned into greenhouses? What if climate refugees from the Caribbean moved and worked in Fort McMurray because it was the most affordable place to live and experimented with their favorite foods back home? And it was just warm enough and there were the right technological advances to make this all possible, to have a mango grown in Canada. Introducing Fort McMurray Fresh Mangoes. It is May 16, 2030, and I've just applied for a job as a marketing manager. Instead of submitting my cover letter and resume, I applied for the job using the platform Hire Me. The platform uses my digital identity to determine my employability for the position. This score isn't looking so great, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get the job. The score is based on my social media, LinkedIn, previous employers, police records, and any other surveillance data that exists about me. Right now, this platform is tracking how polite I've been in my day-to-day interactions. Thankfully, this part of the analysis is positive. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Heather Russick, and I love to learn about a lot of different things. And I think that's why the study of futures is so appealing to me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yasmin Rajabi, and I focused my career on developing skills and training programs for young people. While the research we shared today is intended for policymakers to act on, it can also be used by students and workers to help navigate potential career opportunities.
We just shared 2 things from the future to help spark your imagination today. By raising your hands, do you think these things will come true by 2030? Maybe. So the reason we're here today is to talk about a project that Yasmin and I have been working on for the last little while called Employment in 2030 for the Brookfield Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The Brookfield Institute is a policy-focused institute housed at Ryerson University. We generate far-sighted insights and stimulate new thinking to advance actionable innovation policy in Canada. And we do this through research, experimentation, and piloting. And at the Brookfield Institute, we focus our efforts on 4 main work streams. The project we're talking about today actually falls under our Skills for an Innovation-Driven Economy workstream.
So at this point, you've heard us mention several times employment in 2030. This is the larger research initiative that several projects have fallen under. We are developing an employment and skills forecast for the next 10 to 15 years. So we're seeing what occupations and jobs will grow in importance in Canada's labor market and which ones we will need to potentially mitigate risk for, as well as the skills that are going to be in demand and that workers will need to prepare for. This research is based on work our partners, Nesta, have done in the US and the UK. We will be outlining the risks and opportunities for Canadian workers and firms, particularly focused on demographic characteristics, such as how immigration, your sex, or your visible minority status may impact potential opportunities in the future. We aim that our research can inform training and skills programs, as well as modern social safety nets. So why is it that we're so keen to study the future of work? Right now, labor markets are evolving rapidly. There are currently jobs that exist that did not exist 10 years ago, and there's been many advancements. But this also leaves workers in a state of anxiousness. Where do I have the right skills to keep up, especially for the jobs that may exist tomorrow? So governments, educators, and firms have stepped up to the plate and made large investments in investigating the future of work. These investments include the RBC Future Launch's investment of $500 million over 4 years into youth programs, as well as the Government of Canada's investment of $225 million over 4 years into the Future Skills Centre, which is also housed at Ryerson University. So right now, we're hoping that these large investments can be targeted for particular demographic groups, as well as occupations, industries, and skills that will be important, and our research will inform this. But as we're thinking about the labor market, we often think about technological trends like AI impacting our work. But it's important more than ever now to think about how other trends can also impact the future of work and go beyond just technological change. There are trends like sustainable environmental sustainability or demographic change that can also impact the future of work. Our research takes a multi-phased approach and a mixed method approach. So our research is clearly defined in 3 phases. Our first one, which Heather will touch on in a moment, is our trends research. So we identified over 600 signals of change in Canada's labor market, and we categorized them into 31 broad trends. These trends were summarized in our report, Trend and Faces Change, which we used to inform the second phase of our research, which was expert workshops, So we met with over 120 labor market experts across the country in 6 cities in Canada. These experts were tasked with rating how certain occupations that were important to Canada's labor market were going to either increase or decrease or in share or remain constant. We took the answers of our experts and it was used as training data for our machine learning algorithm. Our machine learning algorithm used our experts' ratings as well as a combination of other information about skills and abilities, and it projected this across all of Canada's labor market. So all 500 occupational groupings, we determined if each one of them will either grow in importance or not.
Now, normally people look at the past to understand the future. They look at historical information and extrapolate that forward as if everything will stay the same. But we like to think about it a little bit differently, because the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. There are small examples or signals of change that exist today that might indicate what will exist in the future. But these ideas are not mainstream yet. Ideas that seem wild today may not be so wild in the future. And concepts or things that are certain today may become obsolete in a short period of time. We actually like to think about the range of possible futures on the horizon. So this is the cone of possibilities. And what it tries to tell us is that the longer the time horizon we're considering, the greater number of possibilities exist, and also the greater the uncertainty. There are many futures that we can think about, and if we think about 5 years from now, there are a number of possible futures. If we think about 50 years from now, there are likely infinite possible futures that we could talk about. It's also important to remember that not all of these futures are our most desired or preferable futures. There are also probable and possible futures that we can think about. As a part of our work on employment in 2030, Yasmin mentioned we identified 31 trends or changes that we think might impact the future of work over the next 10 to 15 years. I'm going to talk about 3 of those trends today, but if you want to read about the other 28, feel free to look at a report online. So the first one is one of our demographic trends. Do you imagine yourself living to be 100 years old? It is common knowledge that we have an aging population in Canada, but what is less common is that people turning 100, or centenarians, are actually the fastest growing demographic group. Now this sounds great, we can all live longer, but according to the World Economic Forum white paper, we may not be able to afford to live that long. It is the financial burden of a very long retirement that actually might result in a shift in our working age. We are already seeing this with our latest census, where 50% of men aged 65 are still working. And in the United States, senior citizens are replacing teenagers as fast food workers. Now, this is likely to be even more pronounced for younger people, because according to the National Institute for Retirement Security, 61% of people between the ages of 21 and 32 have absolutely nothing saved for retirement. So will it make sense to still have a retirement age of 65 in the future? Or will it actually make more sense and we adjust to the new reality where people work well into their 80s and 90s? Our next trend talks about something that is definitely uncertain in the future. But the reason I included it today is because it is one of my favorite trends that we talk about. I like talking about this trend so much, I'm probably starting to sound like a crazy futurist. It is about an idea that's definitely wild today, but may not be so wild tomorrow. And it's about an idea that brain enhancements may become a reality. There's actually 4 very interesting signals telling us that this may become true in a very short period of time. There's a startup in the US called Kernel that's been developing a neural prosthetic to connect our minds and bodies with machine interfaces. And then Elon Musk is creating an implant to connect our brains with our smartphones, and his company, Neuralink, plans to start clinical trials in 2020. There's also research underway in the United States to enhance the number of senses we have, so that in the future we may have telepathy. And American scientists have created something called BrainNet to be able so that 3 people could share their thoughts at the same time. Now this definitely sounds like the stuff of science fiction, but we imagine that this might impact the future of work in a number of ways. Will this be the way that we learn new skills or process information in the future? Or will this definitely be supportive of working retirement in the future? This obviously brings up a ton of questions, and according to Pew Research, 66% of Americans definitely or probably would not want a brain chip to process information. But will this still be true 10 years from now? Or will this possibly be one of our employer benefits to improve our productivity? And then the last trend I'm going to talk about today is something that I think you're likely all aware of already. And this is the idea that if we're working well into our 80s and 90s and changing our careers many times over our lifespan, that lifelong learning will be critical to keep up. We imagine that learning never stops. This is changing the nature of educational offerings, from a one-size-fits-all approach to self-directed learning and micro-credentialing, such as digital badges. An example of this is the Shopify Carleton Dev degree, where computer science students go to school for 4 years, but also work at Shopify and get paid to do it. But what if this existed for other disciplines as well in the future? And what if it was possible not only for people transitioning from high school, but for people throughout their long careers to do something like this? We are also seeing a shift in the value of one-time post-secondary education, where it may be perceived as being less valuable over time, because companies like IBM, Apple, and Google are no longer requiring job applicants to hold a degree. Now, this might mean that we have a number of new educational offerings that open up for people between the ages of 18 and 100 plus. And when I think about this trend in terms of my own life, I actually wonder what my daughter will choose 10 years from now when she's 19 years old. Will she choose an employer-based degree, or will she choose a traditional educational institution? Or more likely, will she choose something that hasn't even been designed yet to support lifelong learning? Now, our labor market, we know, is changing in many expected and unexpected ways. And we need to think about how this is changing and really think about all the broad possibilities of change and think broadly, way beyond technology changes, to prepare ourselves for the future. Because if we create and test strategies against these possibilities, ultimately we can set ourselves up to be more resilient over time.
So Heather just shared a few trends that may impact the future of work and change how we work as well. And some of us may feel uncertain. There's definitely going to be a lot of change on the horizon. So how is it that we're able to be more resilient workers? I want to provide right now a sneak peek into our research. Our full research is going to be published early next year in the spring. But ahead of this, we wanted to provide an opportunity for you to look at some of the skills that will be important. So if you are interested and keen on following along our research, please do so that you can look at the full results. Remember when I had talked about our machine learning algorithm that had projected employment? Well, when we were projecting employment and seeing what jobs were growing and which ones weren't, we also looked at what skills were underlying those growing jobs. And we found that there was consistently 5 core skills that popped up again and again in all of our growing occupations. These 5 skills are core, and they're transferable across a wide range of all of the industries, actually, and sectors and all occupations. So I'm actually going to provide you that information, but before I get into it, I do want to remind us that these 5 foundational skills are the building blocks. That doesn't mean necessarily if you have all 5 skills, you're going to be for sure guaranteed employed in the future. It just means that it increases your probability of being employed, and you'll probably have to do further training or education focused on the particular career path that you want to go into. The first skill I want to share with you is called fluency of ideas. This is kind of a schmancy way of saying that your ability to generate a number of ideas on a topic or brainstorm. So how can this be used? For example, when we were thinking about the event poster that was being created today, the graphic designer probably came up with a range of options and then probably just selected one of them and move forward with that one. So that's a way that brainstorming can be used. Another way is in the way we do our research as well, and I can personally attest to this. So as a researcher, as you're making observations in your study, you come up with a range of theories to explain your observations. So that's another way that brainstorming can be helpful and is used beyond just what we traditionally think of creative roles. This next skill is memorization. I know quite a few confused looks around the room. People think that with the emergence of AI, we will no longer need to memorize anything. Unfortunately, I think those brain implants that you were talking about, Heather, are still a long way from now, or maybe a little while from now, and we may still need to memorize certain things in the meantime, particularly around memorizing procedures. And we can think about this in the way that a programmer needs to memorize a programming language. They need to be able to know it, the fundamentals of it, to be able to do their work. And this is also done in presentations. When you are at work or at school, you do have to keep using this skill. Our next skill is instructing, which is teaching others how to do something. And we can clearly draw on when we were in school, when our teachers taught us calculus or nurtured different skills and abilities in us. So that's a very clear-cut way of thinking about instructing, particularly as teaching is one of those jobs that is harder to automate. But this, especially in the way we're thinking about the future of work, younger people are more likely to change the jobs they're in than previous generations. And as you're moving in between jobs, you're also going to be needing that training and that onboarding as well. And your manager probably will have to do that more frequently than we've done in the past. So it's becoming increasingly important to learn how to teach other people. And our next skill is persuasion. And I think about this, it's your aptitude for changing other people's behaviors. And I can think about so many different ways we can use this in your personal lives as well as your professional lives. Make sure those dishes are clean. But then in our research, we are actually releasing a report next month that I think may be also of interest to many of you in here. It's about the importance of pairing both digital skills and soft skills for this growing portion of our labor market that needs both these hybrid jobs. So that's emergingly becoming clear, for example, for folks who work in software sales. Right? They may need some technical information needed to sell the software, but they will mostly have to rely on skills like persuasion. And this is also comes to for me when I'm thinking about where I work or at different where you may work. So has there been a procedure at your workplace that you don't think is necessarily efficient or is redundant, and wouldn't you want to change it? I'm getting a couple of nods in this room. So definitely persuading your coworkers or your management of picking up a new system is definitely a way that you can use the skill. And our last skill is service orientation, which is your ability and desire to help others. And this can be in the capacity of serving the public or serving your clients. And I want to point this out as accommodation and services are increasingly becoming more popular. For example, in the past summer, I was in France, and my Airbnb host, she messaged me a long list of restaurants to check out. And I definitely gave her 5 stars after that message. This is increasingly becoming important as we think about how we can support other people, particularly as a segment of occupations that are growing is professional and scientific services. So people who are researchers, people who work in consulting, they are striving to meet the needs of their clients. And another sector that I think this is going to be really important in is healthcare. There's a lot of demographic changes that Canada is going to may potentially be undergoing, and one of them we had touched on was our aging population. As we have our aging population, this need for healthcare will rise, and I think many of us would want a nurse or a doctor or a pharmacist who's hoping to be working in the interest of in our best interest as well. So I've just shared the skills that may be important for the future of work, and some of these may not be a surprise for all of us, but it's really, really important that we find a way to embed these 5 core skills in our curriculum from as young as kindergarten to throughout our post-secondary education system as well, and creating more resilient workers. And I do want to stress that these are foundational skills that you will need to build on for those growing occupations. And as we're thinking about the future of work, I want us to take a step back and think about the range of possibilities that may exist in the future. And I think about this in the context of Joey, who you'll actually get a chance to meet in a few moments. Joey's 16 years old, and the jobs that she may be in 10 years may not exist right now. So as a way for us to push the boundaries on what may be possible, when we met with our labor market experts, we actually designed a game specifically for them. It's called Jobs of the Future. It's a strategic foresight board game that you can use. Individuals have used it for their planning of their own career opportunities, as well as organizational planning and long-term strategic planning. It allows you to look how the trends that we had shared, all 31 of them may possibly impact specific occupations, but more interestingly, it allows you to look how those trends may intersect. And please definitely take a look. And right now on the slide, we have an illustration of one of the occupations that our labor market experts imagined, which is a dark web detective.
So we hope that we've given you a few things to think about as you imagine your own future. Yasmin and I are fortunate enough to get to work at the Brookfield Institute and work on this project called Employment in 2030, along with other projects related to innovation policy in Canada. We will be, as Yasmin mentioned, we will be releasing this final report in early 2020. So if you're interested in staying up to date and getting that report as soon as it's ready, please follow us on Twitter or join our mailing list or visit our website to learn more. Thank you so much for having us here today.